finish off this game, what we're going to do is add a simple coroutine to make it so that there's a slight delay after you enter the exit the goal, and it will play a particle effect, and if you choose you can add a sound effect to it as well. And we're going to mess around a little bit with lighting and just look at how you can tweak it, and then you're going to go ahead and upload your game to the Simmer website and post it, or send me the embed code so that I can post it per usual. So what you're going to need to do to start this process is you're going to need to find your goal script and open that up. And right now the only thing the goal script is doing is saying that whenever you run through the collider, we load the next scene, which is fine, but we're going to make this a little bit more of a process that makes it a moment by taking a couple of seconds to play a particle effect. And like I said before, if you choose to add it, you can add a sound or some kind of, something satisfying that plays, giving our player something to make them feel like they accomplished something. So coroutines, if you remember correctly, are a type of method that we can use that we can enter in, say that we want it to wait a few seconds and then do something, which is how we're going to use it in this use case. So to start with, we're going to start coroutine, and in parentheses we're going to give our coroutine a name. I'm going to call it UN. Coroutine UN. It's got two parentheses because it's a method that I'll be calling on, and then the whole thing is enclosed in parentheses. And right now it's got red squiggly lines on it under it because it does not exist. So I need to make an IEnumerator, which is how we start coroutines, remember? UN is what I named it. Parentheses, of course, because it is a method. And then right now that has red squiggly lines under it because anytime you use a coroutine, it has to have a return. It has to have some value that is passed out of it. So we'll say yield return, or not, return new. And then in this case, I'm going to use wait 4 seconds, and you can see there's a whole bunch of different options here. I'm just going to use simply wait 4 seconds. It suspends the coroutine for a given amount of seconds using scaled time, which means like real time. I'm going to say wait for, let's say, 3 seconds. So now this coroutine, all it does is it waits for 3 seconds. What I need it to do is play a particle effect here. I'm going to make some notes. Play particles. And then after it's waited for 3 seconds, I want it to go to the next scene. You'll notice that going to the next scene is a bit of code we already have written right here. So if I were to take this code and cut it out and paste it down here, now it will wait for 3 seconds and then go to the next scene. So let's double check that that's working as intended. If I were to go into Unity, I'm going to run straight into my goal here. 1, 2, 3. See if, yep, okay. It waited for 3 seconds and then it moved to the next scene. It's maybe a little bit of a long time, depending on my effect, I suppose, but now we need this play particles portion. For particle systems, we dealt with it just briefly in the series where we made the bouncing physics game. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a serialized field, and we're going to look for a particle system, which is kind of like a very specific game object. When effects. That's what I'm going to call it. It's my when effects. And then to play particles, literally all you need to type is when effects dot play. There we go. So it's almost exactly the same thing for sound. If I wanted to add a sound file to this, I would add my serialized field for my sound. So it would be an audio clip. And then I would just type in the name of the audio clip dot play parentheses, and then it would play as well at the same time as the particle effects. So let's save this. And one major problem, you might note, we don't have a particle effect yet. It doesn't exist in our game. But we do have an empty spot for it. So on my cylinder, I'm just going to go ahead and right click. I'm going to create an effect that is a particle system. And what you should have is fuzzy kind of white lights. If you don't have that, then something is missing from your game, perhaps an asset, but that's what you should have. And over here on the right, we've got a ton of different stuff. Then I'm not going to go over all of this stuff because we did touch on it a little bit last year. So I'm just going to briefly go over some of the settings that we definitely need to change. So we don't want it to play on awake because we only want it to play whenever we run into it, correct? So if it plays on awake, as soon as it pops on, it starts playing, and then if we're across the map, we're going to see floating particles going up into the sky. It kind of gives us a big hint about where to go for the end goal of the game. So maybe not great. And we also don't want it to be looping. I'm going to leave it looping for now because I'm going to adjust a few things over here. But this just makes it so that if it's not looping, it'll only play for a certain duration, whatever duration is set here. So if I set it for 3 seconds, so I get a really good idea of what it's going to look like. And then this down here, I can hit play, and it shows me what it would look like over the course of its 3-second life, which is fine. So I'm going to put it back on looping, and then I'm going to hit play again. And there are a lot of different things that I can change here. So I could change the color of the particles. My game's kind of got a little bit of a neon, sort of, well, pastel neon perhaps is a better way to describe it. That sort of vibe there. I'm going to look at a few of these things over here. So let's look at shape. I could change it to a sphere. Hemisphere. Interesting. So far, cone is kind of the most satisfying looking shape. Rectangle is pretty good. I feel like that would show up really well on the screen. Perhaps I will change something about how speed. Let's see. Velocity over lifetime, color by speed. There's lots of different stuff on here that I can do. Let's turn on some noise by clicking the bubble, and then it makes it so you can change it a little bit. I'm going to just adjust some of my noise frequency, the strength of my noise, so they do something a little bit more crazy. Yeah, this feels weird. It's just a lot of different playing that you can do. So I could set up trails. My game really did not like that whole idea, so my graphics card probably just decided, nah. But basically, what I want you to do is look through these settings. You can play with them quite a bit and adjust it however you like. So let's take our particle system off of looping, see what that looks like for 3 seconds. I'm okay with that. And then we need to add it to our goal script. So wherever you have your goal script attached, you need to drag your particle system on. And on your overall goal, make sure you go and apply your prefab back to all your other prefabs so that all of your other ones in your other rooms will be able to inherit the same properties of this prefab, because we don't want it to like break your other levels, obviously. And let's run through it. It's playing the particle effect. It's maybe not sticking out far enough, but it does work. So I've got that running. Next thing I want to do is maybe play around with some directional lighting. I can change how much light is coming through by adjusting the color value. Obviously, lighter is going to be brighter, and darker will be very much a darker effect. I'm going to stick with kind of a light color, but I want it to be a little bit more pink, perhaps. It feels a little bit more like a sunsetty sort of vibe, which I kind of am into. How you do it's up to you, but you can change that. You can also do there's several sliders over here, and we could change what type of light, but directional light for me is fine. You can change your mode. We can change the intensity, so it can be super crazy bright or not very intense at all. I'm good with leaving mine at 1. You can change from soft shadows to hard shadows, which is basically just the difference between a little bit more realistic for soft shadows and a little bit more strictly kind of cel shaded for hard shadows. And you can play around a little bit with those settings primarily to tweak your game's feeling. I like the way that that looks for me right now. And the very last thing is we're going to go ahead and add some post processing to the game. So go up to Window, Package Manager, and you're going to want to make sure that this loads. And whenever it's done loading, you're going to find the post-processing stack, which we've added via the asset store before, but this is actually built into Unity now, and this is the way that works whenever you import it to your game, versus if you tried to import it from the asset store, it would break things. I know this because I learned the lesson the hard way, and that's why my game itself right now does not look quite right, because this is an older version of my game, because I was using version management to try and keep things if I broke it, which I did. So that's probably for the best. We'll probably go over version management for our next game just to make sure that you also have access to those sorts of tools. But anyway, post processing stack, we're going to install it, and you're going to let it go through this process. And when your computer eventually finishes that, you should have within your packages folder that Unity has baked in for you, you should have a post-processing folder. We don't have to do anything with that. In the past, you'll probably remember we have added that to the camera that we're using so that it renders everything on there. So we're going to need to add a component. We want to add a post-process volume, and we need to create a new profile. And this is a little bit different than what you've had in the past. So this will be kind of a new process, but that was basically it. I'm going to see if I can play with this a little bit more, probably off screen, but I'm going to go over just how to add the different effects. Before, whenever you added the post-processing stack and you added your effects to your camera, if you remember, or if you go back to the old videos, you would see all of these sections essentially already on there. But now you have to manually add them and then take them off if you're not using them, things like that. So basically, bloom, of course, makes your anything that glows glow more. You got depth of field, meaning closer is sharper, further away is more blurry, kind of how the real world light looks. Vignette is the darkening around the edges. Grain is just kind of the how the world, like if your camera lens is a little bit dirty, it's got a little bit of that to it. So just go ahead and add a profile. It doesn't matter which one. And you'll notice that a lot of this is grayed out. What you have to do to turn it on is check something, and then you can change your intensity to see if it does what you would like it to do. Right now, I don't really have any glowing effects on my screen, so bloom is not going to do a lot for me. So I'm going to go ahead and take it off for mine, but perhaps you have more light sources in your scene, and feel free to, if you want to add perhaps a spotlight or something. So if you add a light and you want to add a spotlight, and then you can take it and put it, I don't know, perhaps over your goal. Right now it is below my goal, so that's not helpful for it, is it? This is probably going to take a lot of finagling for me, but my point essentially is that if you'd like to go ahead and add a light, feel free to do so. Just for effect, it can be kind of a neat thing to do. I'm going to scroll in a little bit and see if I can adjust this just a hair more. There we go. So now it feels like, I don't know, it's something of a thing. And you can, of course, just like the directional light, you can change the intensity, you can change how big it is and what type of light it is. It's all up to you. Anyway, I've gotten distracted, haven't I? I'm going to go back to my main camera. I'm going to add an effect. Let's go with vignette. And I'll turn it on classic and use black for my color. So see if this renders. So you can also, if you'd like to make your game a little bit more fancy, add more lights, add more coloring effects, things like that. But essentially, once you have your particle system and your sound, you can call it a day. If you'd like to, like I've added a spotlight here, there's a variety of different types of light. You can even change it once you've added it. So that's another directional light on top of the light I already had. This is what a point light looks like. A spotlight, I don't know. I kind of like the way a point light looks. So I could go through and do that to all of my games. I haven't really decided yet exactly how I want it to look, and that's your kind of goal, is get everything kind of polished and finished and ready to go. So once you have everything on here and you are happy with your game, make sure you play through it a couple of times. Try to squash any bugs that you find, any errors with your scene flow. Make sure everything's in your build settings and you have an ability to jump between levels. And then you can, on the Google Classroom, find yourself the video about how to upload to simmer.io and send me your embed code, and I will post it up on the website. So congratulations, you've just finished your kind of refresher course on Unity. I think you and I probably both needed it this year because my computer had some kinks to work out, and you're starting fresh from a summer of not having to think about Unity. So congratulations, and we will start on our next game soon.